Hey, thanks for coming back. My name's Joe with Bourbon Battles, and we've got our special guest, Alex from Peerless Distillery down in Kentucky, so stick with us. All right, here we go. Alex, I'd love for you to tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what you do for Peerless, and then we'll get into the story of Peerless and all that stuff. Before we do, don't you think we should have a pour?
That sounds good to me.
How would you like to start?
We can go any direction you want.
Totally up to you.
Let's go with the small batch bourbon, just because it's kind of the flagship. Certainly
that's something you can get at every liquor store in Indiana, Kentucky, everywhere, right?
Pretty much the most identifiable thing we make, I would say.
How many states do you distribute in, out of curiosity?
Actually, at this point, the small batch bourbon is in every state in the country, along with the small batch rye, actually. So both of those products are getting. So what's really
embarrassing, I feel like I've had the small batch rye, but it's probably been in a bar when I've been drinking. So I'm really curious about that. Sorry, I got to wave my hand over there and kick the light sensor on. So tell everybody kind of what you do at Peerless.
Yeah.
We'll get through this. There's some water if you want to drop in there.
Yeah, so I've been with Peerless now for almost 5 years at this point. When I first started out there, I was simply doing tours, working in the retail shop, and I was there about 4 days a week. With time, I've taken on more responsibilities. At this point now, I pretty much oversee a big deal of the on-premise hospitality. So when it comes to doing tours, I'm always there. When it comes to doing a lot of events, on-premise, off-premise, I do a lot of those as well, just getting exposure for the brand. And then kind of recently in the past couple of years, I've gotten into a lot more work with our single barrel program. And that kind of exists on two aspects. We've got the store picks that we do with bars, restaurants, liquor stores. We also have a great program at the distillery itself, though, for doing private barrel picks with the staff. So myself and a couple other people will try to sit down routinely to taste through barrels and kind of pick out some of the ones that we think are the most exceptional and kind of highlight their tasting notes for people who come in to do the tours and just go to the store.
So what I think is super, super cool about what you guys do, I don't know that matters. What you guys do, I've been to the gift shop several times. And I think it's a newer thing where you go back and do a tasting.
Yeah.
And you pay for it, but it's like nothing, right?
$12. Yeah.
And you try a bunch.
Yeah.
What is really fun fact, Alex and I literally just figured out about 10 minutes ago, we're next door neighbors, like literally.
As it may be. Yeah.
So we can be at the distillery in an hour and 15 minutes, which is on Main Street, and we'll talk about that. But you can always get something different down there, which I love. Absolutely. It's always something new. But I'm sorry, that is just my favorite thing about Peerless.
Yeah, I always tell folks that come in, anytime that you're around, keep us in mind because, quite literally every single week we'll put out a different single barrel. That'll be a bourbon and a rye. 5, 6, 7 days will go by. We'll sell through a barrel that typically yields us 160 to 180 bottles. It's always going to be distillery exclusive, so it's something that you can take home with you and remember the time that you visited. So.
Yeah. That place, we're going to get into the story in the distillery and all that stuff. But tell us a little bit about the history of Peerless. Like, I know that you guys made your first spirits in 1889. Yes. Like, I did some homework, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So Peerless is an interesting brand because we are, in this day and age, old and new at the same time. I say this because we've had that distillery downtown open to the public now for almost 10 years. We opened the doors at the very beginning of 2015. We've made all the whiskey in-house under that roof ever since. But all of it is essentially geared at paying homage toward the original brand that had its roots traced back to the 1880s. The original founder's name was Henry Craver, and he had the idea to start this distillery that put a big focus on making premium style bourbon. He called it the Peerless Distilling Company, and that ran essentially from 1889 up until the start of the First World War. Around 1917, there were some grain rationings with the war effort that caused them to have to close their doors because of their lack of supply, but the product was still sold. In fact, for the next 15 years or so, you could have still found Peerless on the shelves. A lot of it was sold during the 20s for medicinal use because of Prohibition. Really up through the mid-1930s, though, Peerless was still on the market until they finally ran out of the original supply. That being said, they didn't make any more. The owner, as it was by that point, was getting pretty old himself. He actually died in 1938, so he only outlived the brand by about 3 years. Had one child. His child was a daughter. She was not ready to start the business over by herself, especially during the Depression, so the family just kind of agreed to let things turn. They went on about their lives. The trademark expired, but the crazy thing is no one ever recovered the brand for over 100 years. It wasn't until actually the original founder's great-grandson had retired that he had the idea to start Peerless back up as a passion project. So Corky Taylor is our current owner. If you're ever at the distillery, you're probably going to run into the guy. I mean, he's 77 years old now, but he is in that distillery every single day of the week.
Neat.
Yeah, what a guy.
And you talk about neat. That building.
Yeah, it is. It's
super,
cool.
super cool.
It's cool. It's a little spooky, but it's really cool. Yeah, it's about 140 years old. The property that we are in has been about 4 different businesses before we acquired it, but everything from tobacco auction sales to burlap sack manufacturing. Even prior to that, it was an artisanal well. The DuPont artisanal well was essentially the first business that occurred on those grounds. But we've owned it now for, at this point, going on 12 or so years. We've had the place open to the public now for every bit of 10.
Wow. So super cool. So, and we'll get into a little bit about the distillery experience. Let's get into some other spirits. What do you want to go to next? And I know you're kind of, you already know what everything tastes like.
Yeah.
So.
You know, we could go on the bourbon train still. We could also do
You want to go bourbon then rye?
We could, or honestly, I feel like a good buildup would be to show some of the more specialty releases on the latter part. So maybe even the small batch rye could be.
Right here? Is that this one?
The small batch rye could be, I think perhaps even early in the video I might have said that was small batch rye, but that's because it's not facing me.
You want some? Or are you good?
Yeah, I'll get a little bit of that small batch rye here.
So this is 111.9 proof, and I'm guessing that varies batch to batch a little bit.
It does, yeah. One thing about all of our product is that it's going to be exclusively cask strength. So you're going to find that.
So even the regular small batch.
Yeah.
Cask, this one's 110 and a half.
Yes. 111.9 on this one. In most cases, our small batch is coming somewhere between about 108 and 112 proof. But because we never add water after the fact, the proof is the proof.
So I'm a big proponent of having something like this. I talk about it all the time. And this, I like this one specifically, and I couldn't find it again if I had to, but it gives the smallest, tiniest of a drop.
Yeah. And
I feel like that just kind of changes those,
certainly, yeah,
the fatty esters and the oils and changes it all around. So I love that. And a lot of people think that you're mimicking a cube, and that's not at all what we're doing.
It's not at all. You know, I always tell folks when it comes to ice, I'm pretty much only going to ice if it's going to be for a cocktail.
Yep.
The temperature.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's
it's a great
fantastic.
Rye. The temperature with ice is, I think, the biggest deal breaker. But the rye is one that, like, daily is surprising people that I let try.
And I know I've had it before.
Yeah.
I've never owned a bottle. Man, I talk about this all the time. I don't like to talk about tasting notes because it's so subjective. And what you taste and I taste are totally different things. We call things different things. But, like, do you hear a lot of butterscotch in your rye?
I do, yeah. Butterscotch, sugarcane. I mean, there are some like mild sweet herbs, but what I think is not there that a lot of people expect from rye that tends to be a negative in people's book is the spice. It doesn't really have a lot of heat. It's not that peppery.
That's right.
It's hardly even grassy, if anything. I mean, we're looking at like the sweet herbs, the cane sugar, you know, the butterscotch, the caramel. And it's just dense and very soft. I think soft and friendly is about as good as you can say it is.
Sweet would be the biggest thing I'd say for a rye. And I love sweet ryes. Do you disclose mash bills?
We don't, but I will say it's kind of somewhere in the balance. We're looking around 60% rye, corn, barley as well, too.
Now, I noticed you don't have one here, but you are getting huge acclaim right now. And it's probably sold out. your high rye bourbon is the hottest thing around.
It is, and you want to know the hilarious thing? I had a high rye.
You drank it, didn't you?
Well, I drank some of it. I left it at an individual's house who had us over the other week. Actually, the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight. I said, "Here's a housewarming gift. Thanks for having everyone over.
Yeah,
we appreciate it."
It's
so I don't have that one here. It's a great whiskey. Actually, it's at the gift shop right now. If you go to Peerless, we just restocked it about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Will you snag me an ounce?
Yeah,
so I can review it.
Absolutely, I would. Yeah, I wish I had it right now. It's one of those that. I know it's great stuff, but for me, these whiskeys are never in short order. So I also, we'll hand it off sometimes.
That rye. So I'm kind of on a rye kick right now, and I have this big propensity to these smaller distilleries. And you guys are a smaller distillery, but you're a big distillery too, right? You're not a small craft distillery. You've got this national distribution and different things. Yeah. But when you go there, it feels like a mom and pop distillery.
Very much so.
Really, really cool.
Yeah, we make about 12 barrels a day there. We really do.
That's it.
That's all.
Wow.
Really, I know, and that seems crazy.
Yeah,
it does. But every time that I bring a group in and we get towards kind of the end of the tour, I'll ask them, what time did you all get here at? And I'll say, well, you know what? You've been here about an hour. That's about as long as it takes for us to make one barrel.
That's crazy. Yeah. I didn't realize that. So
6 a.m. to 6 p.m. will be our distilling schedule.
We've got to get down and do that. So what we got next? We'll keep talking. But...
For sure. Yeah. Let's get into the double oaks next. We've done the small batch bourbon. We've done the small batch rye. Let's do the double oak bourbon.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I think what you're going to tell me is your next most popular thing is your double oak rye, or is it the bourbon?
So the double oak bourbon by general sales,
because people are more comfortable buying it.
Double oak bourbon sells more than double oak rye as a whole. Now, what's really interesting is that when it comes to the gift shop and like the distillery tours we offer, what we sell there in the store is about half and half.
Because they taste it.
Because they get to taste them both.
Yeah.
So when you try them both side by side and you get a better sense of which direction you're going to prefer, it tends to kind of even things out. I've always had a real sweet spot for the double oak rye. To me, it's about as good as anything that you can make available year-round. And I say that about the distillery. That's not something that's super available in the market on a day-to-day basis, but we do distribute it. The double oak bourbon we make more of. This is going to be about 5 batches a year produced. The double oaking is pretty extensive, though. We're looking at about 2 years in the next barrel or longer sometimes. So it's not uncommon for a double oak from us to be an 8-year-old bourbon.
And that comes through, right? That is not, if you're thinking Woodford or Old Forester 1910, that is not this. This is a totally different experience.
It is. It's. I tried to not compare this double oak to a lot of double oaks out there simply because it does stand very far apart. It's higher proof. It tends to be a little older. It's a smaller scale batch. There's a lot less of it to go around, obviously.
It's delicious.
It's incredible.
So one of the things that, and Alex and I were talking about this before we started filming, one of the things that I absolutely love about Peerless is I don't like everything you make.
Yeah.
Because they push the boundaries a little bit. There's one specifically, and it doesn't matter what it is, because everybody has such a different, unique palate. I don't like to go to a place where I love everything they make. That is crazy to me. You're not pushing the boundaries. There are a few things that I don't care for that you've made in the past that I went and tried. But what's neat is you go in that tasting room and try 5 things. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, something like that.
You're going to love a few of them. That
Certainly.
And when you come back a month later, it's different.
Yeah, it is.
It's a totally different experience.
Even a week later. We've actually, crazily enough, we've had folks who come in town for a week on their vacation and they hit us early in the trip.
Like on their way down to Florida, on their way back?
Yeah, and on their way back, or if they stay in Louisville for the entirety of a week and before they're taking their flight out, they stop by the distillery in the morning to snag a couple things. What was there when they first came in wasn't what was there at the end of the week. So all the time.
Which is amazing, right? But you still have your base products. So this specifically is a great example of why I try things with 1 drop of water. Now, I'm a whiskey nerd, right? So this is actually Kentucky limestone water that I buy, which is not really necessary, right? You can do it with a good bottled water.
Yeah.
Or you can do it with tap water, right? Because it's got minerals in it. This is a lot better to me with a drop.
That I can agree to that to a sense. When it comes to the summertime, I've always kind of get itching for double oak bourbon when I'm out by the pool. A couple drops of water in this to me is just spectacular like that.
And so I would highly recommend, if you've not done it, like get one of these, right? You could buy 5 of these on Amazon for $3 or something crazy.
And we do the same because we keep those distillery stocked constantly.
Anywhere I go, I highly, highly recommend these things. You can do it with you don't have to have those. You can have a glass of water and a straw.
Yeah, you can do that too.
And man, it just taste it first, taste it with, go back and forth. It changes the entire. You're not proofing it down with a drop.
No,
to speak of. You're just changing the makeup, and it's just fun to play with. And that's every once in a while. Typically, I prefer it without that. I like it the way it was made, but that's a great example of like the small batch. I liked it better without the water.
Yeah.
The rye, I liked it better without the water. That one, night and day, I loved it with the water.
Yeah.
Now, if I could only remember those things, that's what I like. So you have to play with it.
Yeah, you absolutely do. And it's always in the eye of the beholder. You know, you're going to buy the product, and kind of generally the way we do all this is it's as is. It is straight from the barrel. We have not added any water to any of our product. We haven't done any excessive forms of filtration. We just sift out the sediment that flakes off the barrel. So when you purchase a bottle of any of these, it's as is. It's up to you how you want to drink it. Do you want to have a piece of ice? Do you want to have a few drops of water? The small batch bourbon and rye, for one hand, I use for cocktails all the time. I think they're great for it. Maybe not some of these other crazy ones, but the core line, I think, is pretty versatile in that sense. So,
and I'm a big proponent of don't let anybody tell you how to drink your whiskey.
No.
You bought it.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want with
Absolutely, yeah. Put it in eggnog.
Yeah. I always make the joke, if I win the lottery big, we're going to go down to Louisville, right down the street. I love Merle's.
Yeah, Merle's Whiskey Kitchen. They love us.
We're going to go down there and drink Pappy Van Winkle pina coladas till we all pass out or go to jail. Are you in?
Sounds good to me. Yeah.
So drink it however you want. Don't be afraid to experiment with the water or an ice cube. Yeah. That's not for me, the ice cube, but hey, what do we got next?
I think we ought to do the double oak rye.
That's toasted.
Yeah, we ought to double oak rye next. I think this will be a good sense to give your grounds on bourbon versus rye and the double oak spectrum.
So this bad boy, I have had a bottle.
Yeah.
Guess what happened to it?
It's not here with us anymore.
It's gone. This is, I've done an episode on this on our Friday Rye Day.
Oh, have you?
I did. I'll send that to you. I'll track it down and send you the link to it. One of my favorite ryes.
Yeah.
It's very unique. It's very different. Like I say, I have a few ryes to choose from in here. This one's good.
I tend to prefer this to the bourbon.
I think I will too, if memory serves. So one of the things that I love about a good whiskey, last night, I think you and I were talking, I had the opportunity to try the new Russell's Reserve 15. It's good whiskey.
Very good.
It's very silly expensive. What I love about a really good whiskey is if I can spend more time just nosing it than I do drinking it, that's a big deal for me. And this falls in that category.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like when I get a pour of something like this, particularly in a bar where I don't have a bottle sitting on the countertop where I can just fill it back up.
Yeah.
When I nose it first, I don't want to drink it.
Right.
Because I want this to last longer. And that's immediately what I think of with this.
Yeah, we started making, or I guess
it's amazing.
We started bottling this about 2 years ago. So it's not something that we've had nearly as many versions of out there as the double oak bourbon. And year to year, currently we're making only 1 or 2 batches of this. So it's less available. At the distillery, we try to keep this up year round. Here, I mean, around central Indiana, I never really see this. Do you see it
Not
much?
on the shelf, no.
I would agree. So,
in fact, the one that I had was gifted to me. Hey, do a review on this. Yeah. I don't remember by who. I apologize, but no, I've never seen it on the shelf here. And you don't need to, right?
No.
Like, if you were within a few hours of Peerless, you should be going there on a fairly regular basis. And we'll start to get into that now, the distillery tour. So you guys are located on the far west end of Main Street. Yeah. That's about as far west as you can go. Yeah,
we're the last distillery on Main Street. There's one brewery that's just to our west. It's about a block away, but this is the last distillery that's on what people consider the Whiskey Row Trail.
So you can start at either when people ask me what distillery should I go to, I want to go to the Bourbon Trail because I get that question all the time.
Yeah.
And I always say downtown Louisville.
Yeah.
Right. There's not a lot of distilleries down there.
No.
But there's a lot of experiences down there. So you can either start at Peerless or Angel's Envy and work the other direction. You can literally go down one side of the street and back the other if you want to walk more. But between you guys and Old Forester, and so what I actually kind of like about Angel's Envy is you have this ultra modern distillery,
right? And
then you guys at the other end of the spectrum, right?
Totally,
the buildings are totally different, and it's a really cool experience.
Yeah.
And this craft is, I guess, would you consider yourself a craft distillery?
We would. We're on the craft trail. It's an interesting kind of situation to be in because we're small volume. Our distribution kind of method has been, though, to do as much wide spread as possible. What that tends to create, though, is less volume. So while we're in all these states, the volume is a bit less than some of the other brands might be as a result. But we figure for exposure's sake, that's the best technique because that gets us in the eyes of as many people as possible.
Yeah. I believe, right, I think there's a lot of people that would argue with different things in your side of the business. You have some of the best packaging there is.
It's a good-looking bottle.
It's a good-looking bottle. Everything about it's beautiful. And that does matter, right? I love to say I don't give a rat's ass what's on the label. I just like the whiskey, which is why I typically do things blind.
Yeah.
But the bottles do matter.
They do.
If you have 5 bottles, no, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I have more than 5. So unique things are cool.
They are, yeah.
When you collect, and a lot of the people that watch this are obviously collectors.
Sure.
Why else would you sit around watching me on YouTube? This is a great example of I would never put a drop of water in this again.
Yeah.
I much prefer it without.
It's good as is.
It makes it spicier. It brings up more of that rye, and I like it better without.
It's heavy. It's rich. It's got subtle sweetness, but to me, like the word I've always used for the double oak rye is it's savory.
Yes.
You're getting earth and leather and wood smoke and cured tobacco and just like all these dense, rich, dark flavors.
Yes. And some sweetness.
Yeah. And some sweetness to back it up. But I think there's just a harmony with this that is just best reserved as is. It's so good.
Now, one of the things I always say I have these rules, right? We're never going to do this, then I do it, right? I don't talk about price because price is so subjective today to every individual.
Yeah.
This is not cheap whiskey.
They're not. No, they're not.
But to me, if you're going to have let's just say the average collection of somebody that watches this is 50 to 100 bottles, 50 bottles.
Right.
This is great, what I call special occasion whiskey, especially the double oak rye and bourbon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, everybody should have a Peerless small batch on your shelf, right? That's not expensive.
Flagship, it's available. It's in the $60 range.
Yeah,
that's going to be around.
That's a normal thing anymore for a smaller distillery.
Yeah.
But as far as the other stuff, if you need a special, like Thanksgiving's coming up, you need to bring something. This would be perfect to bring to a bottle share, a Thanksgiving dinner.
Certainly, yeah.
We're getting ready to talk about Christmas gifts. It's really hard to, like, if you had to buy a Christmas gift for me for, you wanted to buy a bottle, that's very tough. Right. It's, it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
And I'm not opposed to having backups. So if somebody brought and said, here's a Peerless double oak rye, I'm going to be pretty pumped about that.
It's gonna get put to use. Yeah.
So we're going to get into the last one, and I'll just let you know anything that's left here will go on future videos in our 60-second shorts. So this last one's our toasted, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure I know I've had this. I had it with you a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
You had this indeed. At that event, didn't you?
I did. And the toasted we've had out now for, it's probably been 6 months.
It's fairly new, right?
Yeah, March. This was the first year we released it, and it had been a project that we've been playing around with for about a year and a half prior, just getting the ratios right, seeing how things turned out. The toasted, though, ended up this past fall winning the highest scoring bourbon on the International Wine and Spirits competition.
Fantastic. Yeah, and that's a very reputable work. So you see so many times, look at this award, right?
Right.
Like I won the Bourbon Battles Whiskey of the Year, right? That doesn't mean anything to anybody. there's so many weird ones out there, but that's very reputable.
International Wine and Spirits, they scored it a 98. In fact, categorically, there was only one bottle that scored a 99. It wasn't even a whiskey. It was a rum. But to get a 98 with something that we had first debuted from a little brand that's got 25 employees at a downtown distillery.
So I will tell you,
is unheard of.
That's 110 and a half. I haven't tasted it yet. That's my favorite nose so far.
Yeah. It's good stuff.
By far.
Yeah.
And it's also my favorite whiskey we've tried today. I like it better than rye.
It's good. It is. I'm a softie for the double oak rye. I love it. I have no problem agreeing, and I understand fully why everyone loves this the most. Though. I do.
Yeah. So if you polled everybody that comes to the distillery to do a tour, and we'll talk about tours real quick.
Yeah.
Is that by far the most favorite?
This is the one.
Yeah.
We sell more of this at the current time than we do anything else.
It's super sweet.
And it's by a massive margin.
Would you agree with that?
It is. Super sweet. Your butterscotch, your toffee, your creme brulee, all the friendly confectionery notes that you're looking for in a bourbon are here, and they're here so heavily.
That is a special occasion whiskey to me.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I don't know what you charge for. I do know what you charge for it.
I think it's $119.
No problem.
Now. Yeah.
No problem with that.
Yeah.
When I look at some of the things that are out there at that price point, no problem. And it's a lot for a lot of people, right? I mean, it really is.
Yeah, right.
So it's really hard to come up with a value for something like that and say, yep, that's worth it. That's worth it.
Sure.
That's great. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about if I drive to Louisville today and park out front and take a risk of getting a ticket, right? Because that's where I always park.
Yeah, right.
And tell us a little bit what we can expect when we walk in the door of Peerless, what a tour looks like. You can talk about prices for a tour and that kind of stuff. And the tasting room is specifically.
Yeah. So we've got a variety of options at this point in time. We do and always have done the full tour that includes a tasting. It's a $28 experience. It typically lasts a little over an hour. You get to walk through the entire property. Again, what's cool is, as small as we are, it's all happening production-wise on site. So quite literally, whatever time of day you come in, you're just seeing the transparency of what we're working on at that time.
And that is your distillery is right there.
It's right there.
Is the brick house there too?
We're aging barrels there too.
Everything is there.
We've got a little bit of offsite storage.
That's what I thought.
But beyond the little bit of offsite storage we've got, that building is where all the grain is brought in fresh. We go get them twice a week. It's all milled there every morning. We do 2 cooks a day to start batches for our mash. Everything is distilled there. We're making about 12 barrels a day. And we're aging a good majority of product there. A little bit that we can't fit there is held off-site. Everything is batched, bottled on-site though too. Everything is right there. So whether you're coming in early in the morning, seeing the first tank get filled, you might come later in the afternoon and see the next batch of barrels getting dumped for our double oak bourbon. You might go past the bottling room and see a single barrel getting bottled for a store in California. Whatever's happening that day is going to be what you see.
And let me see if I can get this right. The number of single barrel store picks that you guys do is very, very exclusive. Is it like 80 a year?
We do 100 a year.
100 a year. We do go out to the outside of your
100 a year are in distribution as far as allocations for stores, bars, restaurants. We do about 80 a year in the gift shop though, which is also amazing. I mean, the fact that we go through 80 different single barrels roughly across a calendar year just in the gift shop is impressive in and of itself.
And so I get my reason for mentioning that is when you look at the demographics of bourbon in the United States, the chance that you're going to see a single barrel is pretty rare.
Pretty rare, yeah.
I mean, I've never seen one in Indiana.
No, the Market District is going to be the primary account that's been doing single barrel picks with us.
I'm going to try to smooth him over, and we'll try to get one right here.
Right, yeah, right. I would love to. I would love to do one.
So my point in saying that is if you see one, you probably want to snag it.
Yeah.
So I was telling somebody that you and I are going to do this, and I said, I've got a single barrel pick from the Bourbon Junkies
Yeah.
And there's half of it left. I'm going to get it to you.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious to see how that shakes out.
Yeah.
So yes, if you see one, it's an exclusive thing, but it doesn't have to be, because if you're close enough to drive to Louisville, you can get them all the time.
And and you can pick out our favorites, our personal favorites.
Because you're keeping the best for yourself, right?
I mean, there are barrels that we disagree on that end up getting distributed, and I wish we kept, but that's good news for that program. But by and large, all the barrel picks that we're featuring in the gift shop are our favorites, the one that we take the most pride in. So if you go there and you see a single barrel on the shelf, it's going to be one of the best ones you can find.
Yes. So pick it up.
Pick it up, yeah. Pick it up, yeah.
And especially if it's that high rye bourbon.
If it's a high rye bourbon, yes. High rye bourbon is good stuff.
Is that the best thing you make?
It's a great between the flagships, small batch bourbon, small batch rye, high rye. That bill is amazing. We've done a handful of single barrel picks of that recipe, but because we've distilled so little of it thus far. There's so little of it to go around.
So this has been great. And the longer in the tooth we get, the less people have stopped. But I really thank you for coming. This has been amazing. Alex and I got to have a pour before we started with we got to try a really special whiskey before we started, and that was a great time. I truly hope this is the last time you're here.
No.
Either when we're filming or in general, right? Because like when I say we figured out we're neighbors, like we're next door neighbors.
Yeah, there's an alley that connects us about
40 feet.
Yeah, whopping 40
Not even.
feet, if that. Yeah.
So this has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed this. I look forward to next time we film something. We need to do it at the distillery.
We ought to, yeah. We will.
Because it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Hey, thanks for joining us. Let me know in the comments what you think about Peerless. If you've done this tour, if you've tried any of their expressions, particularly anything outside those small batch expressions.
Sure.
Let me know what you think about it.
Yeah.
Leave a comment. That helps everything. So in the meantime, hey, I want to remind you, drinking bourbon is supposed to be fun. Do it with your friends. Do it responsibly. Whatever you do, don't drink and drive. Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, certainly.
If you drink, don't drive. Do the watermelon crawl.